what I want to do is continue a community conversation that we've been having both at the community level and within our work groups around our 2021 objectives and key results. I see lots of friendly names and some faces with their cameras on who participated in the start of the meeting, but I also see lots of names on our roster today that I don't know were part of our initial conversations with the OKRs. So what I'm going to do is just give a quick recap of what we've started on this journey at the start of the year, and then hopefully engage all of you in a community conversation that's going to be taking place while I speak. You'll also be able to engage to share your reflections, and we'll use as much time as possible to have an open dialogue about where we've been and where we're going for the rest of the year. So our kickoff meeting this year, January 12th, I tried to provide an argument for why we needed as a group to be thinking about focusing on our mission, which continues to be to improve health by empowering a community to collaboratively generate the evidence that promotes better health decisions and better care. I introduced the idea that we could use objectives and key results aligned towards this mission as one way that we could maximize the impact that we can have as a community. I use this silly analogy of us paddling in the same direction, and a couple of you have made references to the community, so if you want to see silly pictures of me and my daughter falling out of a raft, you can go back and check that out. But at that first meeting, we talked about why, we asked everybody on the call, why were you on the journey with OHDSI? And we had a lot of different answers, and this was actually the results of our poll from last time. People wanted to collaborate with other researchers around the world. They wanted to generate evidence. They wanted to develop open source solutions to public health problems. They were here because of the data network, to be part of a community trying to make a positive impact, to improve the quality of epidemiologic studies using data, improve the way in which medical evidence is generated. So there's lots of reasons why people were coming together to be part of this journey. And what I introduced was the idea that we've made progress in terms of bringing a lot of people together, but the next evolution of our community is to not just come together and share each other's experiences, but to actually collaborate together to solve shared problems and work together. And so I introduced the objectives and key results framework as a way for us to define objectives as ambitious goals that we want to achieve, and key results being specific things that we can measure to benchmark and monitor progress. And there's a book by John Doerr called Measure What Matters that talks about this framework, which has been used in many large organizations like Google and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and other places as an organizing framework that I thought would be helpful for our community. The idea of writing objectives is that these are supposed to be the whats. They are supposed to express goals and intents. They're supposed to be aggressive, but realistic. And they're supposed to be something that are tangible, objective, unambiguous. Should be obvious to someone on the outside when the objective is actually achieved, and that successful achievement of the objective should deliver clear value to our organization. The key results are the hows. So these are supposed to be measurable milestones, which, if we see them achieved, present demonstrated progress of advancing the objectives in some useful manner. So these are supposed to be the outcomes, not the activities that we're supposed to see. And we want to be able to see something that's actually evidence of completion. So it needs to be something that when we state a key result, anybody could kind of verify that the key result, the progress that's been made on the key result. And so with this as a framework, we started a conversation towards the start of the year about what should our objectives be as a community. We had brainstormed a few, and when we voted at the start of the year to talk about what people were interested in, we had identified generating and disseminating real-world evidence about 3 substantial public health issues: COVID-19, type 2 diabetes, and health inequalities was the objective that we had brainstormed that had the most votes and interest in the community. The second was to enable a community to generate real-world evidence using OHDSI tools and scientific best practices. And the third was to build an international medical product safety surveillance system that provides evidence about the incidence and risk of outcomes associated with drug exposure. And so those are 3 objectives that were proposed as ideas and that had a lot of interest within the community. So What we didn't talk about at the start of the year is how we need to continue to use this OKR framework as a way for us to make sure that we're actually monitoring and having progress. And so part of this isn't just you specify an objective that you then go off and ignore, but really you want the objectives and your key results to be your marching orders, and you want to use those as a productive way to try to march towards the conclusion that you want to get. And so part of this framework actually involves grading your progress. The framework, you can do this at kind of whatever periodicity that you want. Here we've now, 2021's going fast. We've already made it basically halfway through the year. But we're going to take today as a time to take stock. And the reason for doing this grading is not to cast blame or point fingers or say, like, why didn't we do what we wanted to do? But it's actually just a really good chance to take a moment to reflect on where things are at. And I think when you see where you've made progress, you can ask yourself different questions. So in this broad framework here, I'm just showing you can just quickly quantify progress towards key results by just giving it a score from 0 to 10. And the point of giving a score is so that you can prompt yourself to ask different questions. If you, and at all times, you should never necessarily be satisfied, but you should be trying to learn from what has happened in the past to hopefully improve whatever's going to happen in the future. So obviously, if we gave ourselves a score of 0 or something very low, we need to be asking ourselves, well, geez, this was a priority. Should this remain a priority objective? Because if you haven't done anything, you have to raise the question, why haven't you actually made progress? And think about how you need to do some drastic difference to your behaviors to try to move that forward. You can make some progress, and you might want to ask the question, well, what do we need to change? Or you might make decent progress, and you might just want to ask, like, how can we focus, or how can we help to do a little bit better? If we're making good progress on things, we might want to be asking the question, well, what have we learned? What successes came out of our experience that we want to make sure that we carry forward or even bring to other areas? But if we get to the point that we've actually achieved all of our objectives, that we actually need to challenge ourselves even further and ask ourselves, are we being ambitious enough? And so with this just as a guiding framework, I'd like to walk through our objectives overall and highlight some of the work groups that have adopted the OKR framework and talk about progress, really with the eye towards us all reflecting on what have we done so far and where should we be going together. So with that, I'd ask that, and Craig's going to paste it in the chat, but I ask that you guys all open up pollev.com/PatrickRyan800. And you're going to, when you get there, you're going to see that there's a question for you here that I want you to be continuing to enter in your ideas. The question is very simple. What are your reflections on OHDSI's progress towards its 2021 objectives and key results? And in here, you're going to be able to see the comments that have already been made by others, and you can up or down vote those as you see fit, but you can also add your own comments in. So as I'm going through the objectives and highlighting what I see as the progress we've been making in my own very arbitrary, subjective opinions about our progress, I want you to be using this this page to enter in your own comments and feedback. And I'm going to make sure that we have enough time to go check out all of those reflections from all of you towards the end of this session. I see on my other screen that things are starting to get upvoted, so so some of you have gone on. But again, for those who don't have the access to the chat, it's pollev.com/PatrickRyan800. Okay. So let's dive into where we've been. So our first objective that we had highlighted was to generate and disseminate real-world evidence about 3 substantial public health issues: COVID-19, type 2 diabetes, and health inequalities. We had specified 3 target key results. One was to have 3 fully reproducible study packages executed across 20 OHDSI data partners. The second was to have 10 publications accepted in journals with an impact factor greater than 10. And the third was 10 uses of observational results by external stakeholders that demonstrate influence in policy or clinical decision-making. Now, when we wrote these were kind of annual. This was an annual objective and annual key results. So when we think about it midway through the year, we would be hoping that we were making substantial progress. So like half of these objectives should be met if we're going to be on track. My completely arbitrary subjective grading of this is that I gave ourselves a 6 on having 3 fully reproducible study packages across 20 partners. I gave ourselves an 8 on progress towards 10 publications, and I gave ourselves a 5 towards this 10 uses of observational results by key stakeholders. It's less about the score and it's more about thinking about how can we learn from what's been done and to verify some of the artifacts that we can celebrate of the progress we made and think about how we can actually improve to do even more moving forward. So diving into these key results, the first is to have 3 fully reproducible study packages executed across at least 20 OHDSI data partners. And here I think we actually have quite a lot to celebrate. Under Martine's leadership, the UMAIS project has a package that has been developed and successfully executed across 5 different databases. The work of the vaccine safety work group has produced a study package for characterizing the background rate of AESIs, and this is leading to a series of publications, and we've been able to execute this across 14 databases at this point. Jenna has been leading an effort to create a study package that allows us to develop, train, and evaluate prediction models for COVID-19 vaccine adverse events of special interest. The reason we aren't scoring as much, the reason I gave this score only a 6 in the area where we could help or focus on is we've been making great progress in developing study packages. We have not yet gotten to the point of maturity of getting these packages run across as broad of a data network and community as we would like. And certainly part of the reason we set this lofty goal of not just creating packages, but making sure that we were executing packages across a large collection of data partners is because we do want to capitalize on the value of having this broad international data network and get more data partners to be collaborators and engage in this collaborative research. And so one thing that I'd like you all to reflect on and comment in the thing is, how can we help each other as a data network participate in studies that are going on so that we can really maximize the value of what we can learn across different data partners. Now, our key result number 2 was to have 10 publications accepted in journals with an impact factor greater than 10. And we certainly have made progress towards this objective. You heard about Talita's leadership in getting us to a paper in pediatrics. We've had papers published in Lancet Digital Health, in rheumatology, in the American Journal of Gastroenterology. We celebrated last week our paper in BMJ. Much of this is the work that's coming out of the Charybdis study, and I think that these papers do demonstrate real value in generating information about COVID that has been tremendously useful. Impact factor is a challenging proxy for us to be using to think about its importance. Here we set a target of trying to target high impact journals, and we have had some papers in higher impact journals. I think one of the things we need to be thinking about as a community is, what is the impact of our papers and how does it necessarily go beyond just impact factor of the journal itself? So I think what we've actually seen is a broad breadth of publications that our community has been pushing to generate evidence and get it out there. Not all of the evidence that we've generated, though, is necessarily suitable for a high impact journal, but is important and valid and useful nonetheless. And so I think we're making great progress on here. Certainly the community seems to be rallying together to collaborate on these publications, and I expect that we'll have many more coming in the near future in this goal. Now, we want to have impact not just by publishing papers, but hopefully improving decision making. And I think here's an area where we had a goal to make sure that we were seeing our work influence external stakeholders that demonstrate influence in terms of decision making. And I think we actually have made, we're on our way towards this objective, though it requires that we stay focused on it. But some things that I think we should celebrate and acknowledge the contributions we've made. We've been collaborating with the FDA to help them with authoring protocols associated with how they will be studying COVID-19 vaccine surveillance. And indeed, our community comments that we have been sending as the FDA has been drafting documents. George and Mark can attest that we've had numerous meetings with the agency where they have thoughtfully read and reviewed our feedback. They've asked questions, and they've really embraced the opportunity to use the expertise of the OHDSI community to influence and shape their thinking of the design. So we absolutely can take credit for helping support the FDA in their efforts. You've also seen efforts from the European Medicines Agency going on as the investigation into thrombocytopenia with thrombosis with AstraZeneca's vaccine was coming to play, that it was our background rate information that the EMA was asking for, and we were able to deliver useful information that directly informed their evaluation of this ongoing safety issue, and something we can be proud of that we contributed to. And just 2 months ago, with in the US, the CDC evaluating the Janssen COVID-19 vaccine, contributions from the OHDSI community directly influenced thinking about understanding the background characterization of risks in the context of the benefits that have been observed in clinical trials. And so these are examples where policy decisions have been made, influenced by the work of our community, and we should be proud of that. I'm particularly proud of these as being real examples of real impact. Certainly, it's not the kind of thing that gets so easily placed on your CV in the same way that a publication does. But I think that these are real demonstrations of public health impact that we should be proud of. Now, transitioning to objective 2, to generate and disseminate. Oh, I'm sorry. We're still in the same one. So the one thing I wanted to highlight was when we talked about generating and disseminating real-world evidence, we talked about 3 substantial public health issues: COVID-19, type 2 diabetes, and health inequalities. And here I actually think that there's been a, if we were to grade ourselves on our progress here, I think much of our emphasis and focus has been on COVID-19, and that's where a lot of our progress has been. I think that that's right and appropriate, and we can take stock in being proud that we're helping the pandemic. For type 2 diabetes, Mark Suchard's been doing a great job of shepherding the Legend type 2 diabetes group forward. But in terms of the impact that that's had as it manifests in results and publications and impact, we're still looking for the opportunity to do that. So there's an opportunity for us to think as we hopefully around the world start to emerge from this pandemic, to think about what Harlan Krummel said last year that we used at the start of this year, which is, how can we treat other diseases with the same level of urgency and fervor that we put towards COVID-19? And I think certainly Mark and Jung and Rowan and the entire team that's working on the type 2 diabetes effort could certainly, I think, could use community support as we think about moving that forward as a sustained effort in the community. The one I want to specifically call out, though, is health inequalities. And I think we run a very real risk of following the fads of society. When Black Lives Mattered and George Floyd died, and sexist behaviors were being exhibited and being called out, and everybody said, oh, well, we should be focused on health inequalities. And then the next news cycle happens, and some people stay focused on things that are right for society, and some people just kind of move on to their next things. As a community, we said we wanted to focus on health inequalities, and I'll be the first one to raise my hand to say, like, I have not lived up to my end of the bargain. So we have not made a progress in the health inequality space in the way that I would like for us to. And I think that this is a real opportunity that we need to really be questioning, should this be a priority? And I'd make a strong assertion that it should be. Craig made a reference to the fact that we're going to have a visualization challenge later in July. I'd like for that to be specifically focused on trying to get our collective energy towards thinking about how to explore the health inequality space. And Jody Ann and I are going to be trying to shepherd forward an additional manuscript focused on the health inequalities that we've observed from our Charybdis findings, and would encourage others in the community who similarly feel that this is a public health crisis we need to take on, to take this on with the same level of urgency and focus that we have been with COVID-19 and other efforts. Shifting gears to objective number 2, enabling a community to generate real-world evidence using OHDSI tools and scientific best practices. We actually set 3 key results up front. One was that we would have 100 organizations to be fully operational with technical infrastructure to support local analysis. We'd have 1,000 researchers complete the RWE curriculum, and we would have 100 publications generated using and citing OHDSI tools. We thought that these were very clear and obvious things that we could measure. Turns out that that first one, 100 organizations with a fully operational tech stack, it's actually hard for us to measure right now because we ask organizations to self-identify if they're enabled, but we know that the list of data partners and organizations that are participating far exceeds those that are actually raising their hand and self-identifying. So one opportunity that I would like for if folks are interested, I'd like for us to figure out how, as a community, we could do a better job of inventorying those in the community that are really ready, able, willing, and desiring to engage in these communities. It'll help our first objective of getting more data partners to engage, but it'll also help figure out for those organizations that want to be at this readiness state, what are they missing and how do we get there? I think we can look at the Eden community and what they've done with their small and medium enterprise certification and the data partners that sign on is a really helpful model that we can hopefully learn from in the rest of the community. But I do want to celebrate the tremendous progress we have made on this objective even this year. Many of you may have seen Eden. We celebrated our 1-year anniversary of the Eden Academy, and we had over 1,000 enrollees who are already on our educational platform. This is pretty amazing to think about, given that we have not really done an extensive amount of marketing of this resource. It has really been word of mouth in our community, kind of just saying, hey, this is a great resource you should take advantage of. But to think that 1,000 people have joined the journey of starting their educational process on the OMOP CDM and the OHDSI tool stack on the Eden Academy is pretty remarkable. This doesn't mean we've fully satisfied our goal, because that doesn't mean everybody's completed the RWE curriculum, but it does demonstrate that we've made tremendous progress. And I'll highlight that, publications, we talk about the publications that we as a community want to generate focused on our central issues, but there's a wide swath of folks that are publishing and citing OHDSI tools or the OMOP CDM as a resource that we can take advantage of. When I just did a very, very crude PubMed search, I saw just in 2021, 34 publications that reference OMOP or OHDSI specifically, and that's only only a subset of those papers that have actually come from the community. So I think we've made progress, but if publications is something that you all are interested in, seeing our community expand the communication of what's being done, then there's still more work to be done there. Our last overall objective was to build an international medical product safety surveillance system that provides all stakeholders with access to evidence about the incidence and the risk of outcomes associated with drug exposure. And here you're going to see that I've put us deep in the red because we had 3 key results. One was to have a population level effect estimation and characterization results generated for 500 drugs and 500 outcomes across 20 databases. We have not done that. We wanted to have 100 organizations with at least one active user on this platform. We have not done that. And we wanted to have 10 regulatory actions taken as a result of this OHDSI system, and that has not happened. Now, there have been pieces of progress towards this overall objective, and I still very much believe that this overall objective, while extraordinarily ambitious, is something that's essential. What I would comment is actually, if anything we've learned in this first half of the year, it's that this objective is something necessary for OHDSI to fill a gap. What we have seen, both at the FDA and the EMA associated with the COVID-19 vaccine safety surveillance efforts, is that the world needs proactive analytic solutions to enable us to use data as quickly as possible to generate reliable evidence about the safety of vaccines. And the more that you're scrambling behind the 8 ball, reacting to safety issues, the worse it is for society. It creates issues like vaccine hesitancy. It creates misinformation. It creates unnecessary concern. And so I'm still believe that this is a tremendous opportunity for us, but clearly we can't just wish it to be true. We need to decide as a community whether or not this is going to be something that we're going to focus on and how we're going to take the next steps to get there. What I will highlight as as a specific marker of why this is potentially important and useful is our work on background rates for the COVID-19 adverse events of special interest. Jingtong Li's publication just got a provisional acceptance into BMJ, so we're really good news on that. Anna's paper is going through this process of being routed through our review process, and we also have other papers that are focused on outcomes. But if nothing else, what this work told us is that there is a huge gap in what we understand about the background rates of adverse events, and simple characterization across our network could really propel forward regulatory decisions around the world. And this is something that we can be using as a model as we think about building an international system. And the results that are already out there, you can take a look at data.odyssey.org. I will also highlight that this paper just came out just last week. I don't actually know these authors, and I don't know whether they're actually on our call, but it's a paper called Pharmacovigilance in Clinical Environment, Utilizing OMOP CDM and OHDSI Software Stack to Integrate EHR Data. And as you read their abstract, you can see that they describe that in this paper, we outline the utilization of the OMOP Common Data Model and the openly available OHDSI Software Stack as part of the PV Clinical Platform. OMOP CDM offers the capacity to integrate data from EHRs via an accepted data model. Furthermore, the OHDSI software stack provides valuable analytic tools which can be used to address important questions regarding drug safety quickly and efficiently, enabling the investigation of potential ADRs in the clinical environment. So certainly I will be reaching out to these authors to gain insights and figure out how they can help us with our shared community goal. But I think that it's very clear that this is not just, it's no longer a thought of feasibility, like could we do this or is it possible? This is actually just an opportunity that we can just get on with doing together as a community to move things forward. I was gonna just highlight too, one of let's see, this paragraph was in their publication, and they said, first, given that the OMOP CDM is a widely accepted data model, it provides a potential gateway to a big data sharing ecosystem. Furthermore, the OMOP CDM could be used to integrate other kinds of data. And finally, the statistics and the analytics tools developed by OHDSI are supported by an ecosystem of widely recognized experts with a proven record of highly valuable results on observational studies. I guess I'd first say thank you to the authors of this paper for making those statements, but I think it's actually, it really demonstrates why we've kind of crossed the precipice of whether or not this is a good idea to how do we work together as a community to realize this potential. Now, our primary mechanism to get things done is to work through our work groups. For those of you who have not joined all the work groups on odyssey.org, you can get to this link where you can register for all of our work groups. I'll remind folks that we have a wide array of different activities that are going on across different work groups, that each of these work groups have an opportunity to provide us very specific area of focus and to help us drive our overall objectives forward, as well as to identify and drive forward complementary objectives within our broader OHDSI mission. And so encourage you all to join our work groups as the primary way we just get work done. What I'd like to do is just highlight a couple of the work groups that did embrace the OKR framework to highlight and celebrate the work that they've done. Our Common Data Model work group had really two primary objectives. One was to develop and promote community adoption of our latest CDM, and to establish clear bylaws dictating the CDM change process and versioning. And here, under Claire Blackader's leadership, we've identified a series of key results that are really staged out across the year. Claire's done a great job with the group to make sure that we achieved our first key result, which was to identify and list all of the changes and additions necessary for this community adoption version, and communicate it out to all of the effective work groups. And so now I think for the first time as a community, have really reached consensus about what the latest state of the OMOP CDM, what will be version 5.4, will be, that will meet all of our needs for data partners and for our open source tool developers and for our evidence generation community, that we can align towards a common goal there. As it relates to staff efficiency bylaws for our next generation CDM, we've made good progress in understanding what that versioning and extensions could look like. We're still in the process of identifying initial guidelines for use cases that we will drive forward. One of the things that Claire and the workroom group put together was a roadmap of the OMOP CDM that you can go check out at OHDSI on the OHDSI GitHub repo for the common data model. You'll actually see projects and you can see exactly where we are in terms of items that need clarification, items that are ready to progress forward. Second work group that I'd like to highlight quickly is our population level effect estimation and patient level prediction work group that Martijn Schumi, Mark Suchard, Jenna Reps, Peter Reinbeck have been leading. One of the things that Martijn did was make sure that there was a common research objective that everybody was focused on, that focused on methods for vaccine effect estimation, phenotype research, prediction, and small database challenges. And I've been really encouraged to see all of the progress that has actually been made towards these efforts. The Eumaeus project has delivered results, and we're now authoring a large series of manuscripts on there. In the prediction work, we've seen the formation of a predictive model library under Ross Williams' leadership, and we're also seeing large-scale efforts being led by Jenna and others to gain greater insights in the appropriate applications of machine learning. In terms of phenotype research, I think we've been making some progress in this space, but there's still more to be done. Joel Swardell will be sharing some of the work he's been doing on Phevaluator 2.0 in the coming future. In small database challenges, we've been making progress on some methodologic framework. So I think this idea of establishing a research agenda has really helped us to get everybody's focus on some key areas of opportunity, and I'm encouraged to see that move forward. And then last but not least, I'll also highlight the HADES objectives and key results. HADES is our open source development working group that is focused on enabling the OHDSI community to perform observational research following OHDSI best practices for characterization, estimation, and prediction by providing a cohesive set of open source analytic tools. The three key results that the HADES work group established was to reduce the dependency on a small number of developers, reducing to a maximum number of packages per maintainer to 5, to increase unit test coverage to 80% for all packages, and to release 4 study package skeletons and make sure that they are directly available to users. And I think we've seen progress on all of these fronts, and I want to celebrate that, but we're still not where we want to be, and I'd like to make a specific call out for the community. If you go out to the HADES GitHub IO page, you'll see our package statuses and things to highlight. From our key result number 1, it's really exciting that we have 11 different developers maintaining HADES packages. So thank all of you that are taking on that responsibility. At the same time, we still need the community's help to expand package ownership. Martijn is still owning 10 packages, which is way more than the 5 that was the target for the OKR. And while we all know that Martijn is more than one man, it is not fair to Martijn to have to steward and have this much responsibility for the community. So we really need folks who are interested in making a contribution to the open source development to join the HADES group and help support Martijn and the team on this effort. As it relates to the test coverage, I want to celebrate and congratulate Adam, Chris, Gautam, Jamie, and Martijn, because we do indeed have 6 packages that have more than 80% test coverage, which is actually a pretty impressive feat given the complexity of the tools that we've developed. At the same time, this is to recognize that 14 out of the 20 packages we have do not yet meet the self-imposed HADES target. And this is an opportunity where this shouldn't just be the maintainer of the packages opportunity. For those who want to get your feet wet in making contributions to OHDSI, helping with developing test cases and test coverage is a good opportunity for you to help. So if you're interested in that, I would recommend that you reach out to the HADES maintainers or join a HADES workgroup meeting and make a contribution there to help us achieve this overall objective. All right. So with that, I just spoke for an awful lot of time. So I'm going to actually shut up and listen to all of you. I'm going to switch my screen to go to the reflections that you all are added in. While I do that, if anybody else on the line wants to unmute themselves and provide any comments about where we are and where we're going, I'd love to hear it.
Oh, Patrick, this is Kristen. I think it's worth saying that for those who are looking to do active COVID work, should they be joining UMAIS? Should they be calling up Anna and asking her if she needs help with her revise and resubmit?
Yeah, so I think for COVID work, I think that they're right now, so we had a very centralized effort coming out of the COVID study-a-thon last year where we kind of kept all things COVID together. And I think what we've seen for the natural evolution of things is there's lots of different questions that people are focused on. For those that are interested in methodologic questions about best practices for effect estimation in COVID, the UMAIS project is ongoing, and we've got several papers and publications that we're working through. For those that are interested in prediction work on predicting outcomes associated with COVID, Jenna's leading that study, and you could reach out to her on the patient level prediction work group. For those that are interested in general questions of vaccine safety, we have an active work group that's focused on characterizing background rates and starting to help with the phenotyping of outcomes that we can study. And for those that have other ideas or other opportunity or other questions that you'd like to ask, you always are invited and encouraged to initiate your own network studies by bringing new questions to bear, developing your protocol, developing the code, and bringing those opportunities up at the start of these calls when Craig asks for who's got something going on. We encourage you to bring your ideas to the table and find collaborators to work on it. Okay, so I'm just sharing my screen here. I'm just going to see what the tenor of the reaction is from the crowd. But please feel free to raise your hand or chime in as we go through. I see that our top 3 vote getters here are centered on continuing with our objectives. So we've made some progress on all of these thus far. And it sounds like there is general widespread agreement to try to drive these objectives forward. So if you've been joining and wondering how I could make a contribution, I think starting by looking at our objectives and saying where can you plug yourself in could be a good place to start. Let's see, scrolling down here. See, so several people have said that this OKR framework is helpful for promoting focus and collaboration. One thing that I fell down on the job this first half of the year was really trying to drive this practice throughout all of our work groups. And it's something that I've just been remiss to not be able to deliver on myself. But for those who want to learn more about this, would like to bring it into your own study activities or work group activities, I certainly would be happy to help and collaborate with you on that. We've got 1 dissenting vote on the OKR framework. So if folks have other ideas for how to facilitate collaboration, then I'd also be open to hear that as well.
Patrick, I would
Yes.
comment on that for the CDM working group. I found in past years that we've often had trouble and we've gone in different directions and we haven't really been able to come together in on one goal very well. And so I think the OKR has been really helpful because I usually open up each meeting saying, this is what we're working on this year. What are we doing to get there? And so that's been really helpful to refocus. I know a lot of us have jobs that aren't OHDSI centric or OMOP centric. And so just to refocus and reground everybody on what we're doing has been helpful. And I would say that it's helped us reach out to the community. And I felt much more like a community this year because I've been talking to people in many different work groups. And I think as we get bigger, that's going to be something that is really critical for us to stay connected and talking to each other and knowing what each other is doing.
That's a great point. Thank you, Claire. Any other comments?
Hey Patrick, this is Moya. I want to echo what Claire says because, I mean, on the Asia Pacific side, these OKRs have really helped us be more focused, especially knowing that there's 6 different chapters over there. And each one of those chapters also had a ton of goals in mind, but having OKRs help them prioritize, the top 3 that they want to work on and look at how their chapters are organized and what their priorities are in order to meet those top 3.
Thank you, Emily. Yeah, it was great. It was great to see that the Asia Pacific chapters kind of embrace this idea of trying to come up with some shared goals rather than everybody running in their own directions. I think that's quite helpful, and it shows the alignment of the region together.
Yeah, and it does help, like you said, right? The Asia Pacific side, they have their own overall community goals, and then within that, how do you work on that within each chapter, right? Because some of them have different focuses, like Korea is a lot faster, so they're not focusing on conversions, but then Australia and Taiwan is focusing on that, right? But and then Korea is more focused on research, so, but it still matches the 3 overall goals that we had for Asia Pacific.
Very good. Thank you, Lily. Any other thoughts or comments? I see that the next one that's percolated to the top is that progress has been made, but I'd love to see more work in the area of health inequality. And I see also in our chat that Mark provided some specific opportunities. But if there are those that would like to take this from a desired state to actually making some tangible progress, I would strongly encourage us to get going on that. I think we have an opportunity with the work that we didn't finish out of Charybdis to look at things. And Noemi was trying to initiate efforts on the HERA study that she had started late last year. But I think that there's huge opportunity within our network to tackle this, and we just need people committed to try to drive it forward, and encourage those that are interested to get on that. All right. We definitely should have more dance parties. I'd like to assign Kristen the responsibility for making sure that we set a new objective for whatever is the next work group to focus on meeting our dance party quota. All right.
Patrick, just because some people don't have access to the chat, what Mark brought up in the about the possibilities in discussing health inequality, I wonder if Mark actually wanted to kind of just talk about that for a minute. What you posted and where it's, especially with the type 2 diabetes studies that you're doing. I don't know if you, even if you just want to read what you posted, but not everybody does have access to this chat. So I do want to get that out there because there's a lot of talk about the health inequality issue.
Greg, thank you for putting me on the spot. So the quick answer is no, I don't feel comfortable talking about it at the moment, but I do understand that many don't have the chat. So I did raise some initial health inequality issues that one could look at, particularly in relationship to diabetes treatment. Here there are both newer and older diabetes agents. These newer agents, as you might expect, are much more expensive, not available on many formularies, and not as widely used, but they do have demonstrated cardiovascular risk benefits. What we don't know in terms of health inequality is the older agents, which are much less expensive and much more readily available, were never tested to look at their cardiovascular risk benefits. And so there's a big need both to characterize utilization of these different classes of drugs across a large number of different populations in different healthcare systems, and also the evaluation of cardiovascular risk benefits between these drugs, since their availability tends to differ widely across different communities. That started a discussion in the chat on what type of information do we currently have across our data partners in terms of health inequality measures. One specific example are socioeconomic measures. And then there's a further discussion of how can we bring in different measures of health inequality, in particularly geographic regions, and the work going on in the GIS work group, relationships between the GIS work group and HADES in terms of building common tools that we can use to help characterize health utilization questions across geographic region and other indicators of socioeconomic status. So thank you for that opportunity, Craig, to jump on a topic which I feel very unqualified to speak on, but am extraordinarily interested in helping our community kind of push forward on these topics.
So we have about 1 minute left. Does anybody else have any thoughts, reflections, questions for the community as we look towards the second half of the year?
Hey, Patrick, it's Evan here.
Hey, Evan.
Hey, curious to get your thoughts here. I mean, you noted that there's been maybe a bit of a struggle on making progress on health inequalities as an area. Other than it kind of becoming, somehow a sub-theme within some of the existing work, I guess that the risk is if that's the path, then it kind of remains hidden to the to the broader community at large. And curious as to whether or not you see a role for a work group to kind of surface, what methods might be used to do this type of work, so that it can benefit from broader kind of sunlight and work from the entire community.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, Evan. I think if we want to be serious about driving health inequality, that should have its own focal point, not just be a subtopic within other efforts. So I think a work group centered on that. I think that a lot of what I see that uniquely differentiates the opportunity for OHDSI, there are, just looking at, I had paid attention to the literature on things like racial disparities for COVID. And what you see is individual institutions, small populations telling an anecdotal story about what happened in their institution. But the idea of looking at systemic differences and inequalities by whatever factors, gender, race, and looking across populations, it may very well be basic characterization style analyses, but it could be profoundly important to show that there are these systemic differences that are observable across disparate data. And I think putting that at the forefront, not just as a sub-theme within a topic, but actually as an objective in it itself, I think is a good opportunity. So if there are folks that are interested in a work group, I see already several people suggesting to do that. I think that would be a great way to get the conversation rolling.
Thanks for all your work in putting this together. By the way, this is really valuable, I think, for the community at large to kind of to resurface these areas of focus.
Thank you, Evan. All right, I know we're at time, so I'll turn it back to you, Craig.
Yeah, just want to echo what Evan said. Thank you very much, Patrick, for all the work on this. We will have this video and the slides on the community calls page and in the files on the OHDSI page, OHDSI and Teams later today. So thank you very much. I hope you have a great week, and we'll see you next week for 10-minute tutorials. That was a really popular one last time, so looking forward to it again. Have a great week, everyone.